Hey everyone, it's Brennan. Welcome to my channel and welcome to another video. Today I have for you the best books that I read in 2021. And when I say the best books, I mean the ones I enjoyed the most. I hope you enjoyed some of these also, but if you didn't like any of these books, well, I did. So this was really difficult to arrange these in order, but I did try my best. A lot of these are just so different, it's hard to compare them to each other. But I did rank my top 10 in order, but truly, any of these could be number one depending on my mood that day. And then at the end of the video, I'll also just like throw out some other books that I really enjoyed, but just didn't quite make this list. In number 10, I have Tweet Cute by Emma Lawrence. Shout out to Kirsten from Kirsten's Corner. I'll link her below. She got me to read this book. This is a young adult romance, and it was just so much fun. We are following two high schoolers. One's on the swim team and one's on the dive team. And they have a friendly relationship, and their families own kind of competing businesses. Our female main character, her family owns like this restaurant chain. Then our male main character's family has this family-run deli, and they have very similar grilled cheeses come out, and then they enter this grilled cheese war on Twitter together. And this book is just so much fun. There's a lot of cooking and baking things going on in here, and I had such a good time reading this. And I just don't read a lot of young adult books, so this book was just really special. In number 9, I have Circe by Madeline Miller. As I was reading this though, I was like, this might be the best book I've ever read. Also, I listened to the audio and I felt like that was the way to go. For these books that are like telling a story, I know every book tells a story, but these mythology and retelling type books, I just think they are great to listen to on audio. This is a retelling of Circe. In some of my other videos, I have really let myself go into Greek family tree history. I won't do that here. Just know this book is a sad but hopeful and emotional time, and Circe is a witch. She is like an immortal witch, and she's an outcast in Greek historical society. And this book is her life and trials and tribulations and adventures, and it's just a lot of fun. I enjoyed it a lot. She's a plant person. I'm a plant person. That's what I'll leave you with about Circe. And then I have Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. This is a fantasy. I suppose you would call it young adults. And this centers around our character Laszlo Strange. He is a librarian, and in his free time, he studies this lost city that goes by Weep. But it goes by the name Weep because one day everyone just forgot its name, and a lot of people don't think it even exists. So Laszlo gets made fun of a little bit. No one really takes him seriously until a convoy comes through their town and is like, hey, we're going to this lost city. Do you have any scholars who know anything about it? And then we just go on this adventure, and we meet another character once we get to this city, and it's just so emotional. I could not believe the ending of this book, and I also can't believe I haven't read the second book, Muse of Nightmares. It's staring at me up on my top shelf book, because the ending of this book was just so much. It was honestly so painful and so good. So if you're in the mood for a young adult fantasy and you feel a little, you know, dreamy, romanticized, fantastical. I read this in a Pisces reading vlog earlier this year. Pick this book up though. I loved it so much. And then in number 7, I have The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. I believe this is a debut novel, and this is so good. This is fake dating, which is not my favorite trope, but I ate this book up. I loved the characters so much. So the setting is Stanford on their campus, and we are following a PhD student and then a professor slash PhD mentor, but not her mentor, but they end up fake dating. They have an arrangement that benefits both of them, and we're just following their, like, how do I put this? Nerdy, just like smart, just like fun time, awkward and wholesome relationship, and I loved this so much. Something I love to point out is Adam, our hero in this book. He is like very quietly invested in Olive. our female main character. That's another way you can tell I love this book. I remember their names. But he is just very quietly protective and just her biggest like supporter, but without coming out and outright saying it. And then there is a scene at the end of this where he gets quite protective, like literally, all right, I'm gonna have to kill this guy protective. And I ate that up in a contemporary. Usually you only get that in like darker romances or historicals, and it was just done so well in here. I loved this book. The one steamy chapter in here, a lot of people said it was cringy. I lived for it, literally lived for it. And the dialogue, this was just so good. I loved this. Pick it up if you haven't already. In number 6, I have Finlay Donovan is Killing It by El Cosimano. This is a romantic suspense, I suppose you would call it. It's light on the romance. There are going to be more books in this series, so I don't know. I'm sure like relationships will develop, but the premise of this book is just so golden. So Finlay is an author. She writes romantic suspense, and she's having a meeting with her agent at a Panera Bread. And she's describing her book, and a woman at the Panera Bread overhears them, then tries to hire Finlay to kill her husband. She thinks Finlay is a hit woman, and she's like, I'll give you lots of money if you my husband. And then chaos ensues from there. Finlay's in a position where she could really use that money. She's recently divorced. Her husband is like low-key about to try to take the kids away from her. And this book is so much fun. Her babysitter gets enlisted to help her, and it's just such a great time. I loved this so much. It goes without saying, I've given all these books on this list 5 stars, and I cannot wait for the sequel to this book to come out. In number 5, I'm putting A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. Really, I suppose you would say this series, because I really liked ACOTAR, the first book too. I've only read the first 2 books. This is the second book in Sarah J. Maas's A Court of Thorns and Roses series. This is I'm going to call it adult fantasy. We have steamy times in here, so that makes it more adult for me. But this is very fae heavy, and we are mainly following Farah, who is a human girl, and she kind of gets herself into a situation where she has to go live with the fae, and then her life is never the same again. It just isn't. But her life kind of sucked to begin with, because her family like had a lot of money, and then they didn't have a lot of money, and then they just sat around and let Farah, this like 10-year-old girl, feed them. So she's been doing that for a while, and then her life is different but also still difficult. And we have lots of action and relationships and drama, and this series has just been so much fun to read so far. Okay, this top 4 is where it got really difficult. So in number 4, I have There Are No Saints by Sophie Lark, but just know this book could easily be number 1 because it is so different from all the other romance books that I read this year. This is indie, this is dark, this is a serial killer romance. So we have 2 serial killers, and they are competitors, you could say. So that's their like secret competition, but their public competition is that they are both artists, and they just have like a tense relationship. And then our love interest Mara comes in, and she is a starving artist. She does not have the fame and success that these other 2 guys have. Well, poor Mara gets pulled into their situation, and she's kind of left for dead at one point, and then she kind of saves herself because her love interest is not about helping her at that moment. But then her love interest Cole, one of the serial killers, he gets so obsessive, as you might expect from a sociopathic serial killer. And listen, this was just such a fun time. This is not a relationship that you would want to mold in your real life, but this was so much fun. And what made this so special is that there's a Spotify playlist, and when you get to certain parts of this book, it's like play this song, and they are just so perfect, and they just really take this book to a whole new level that I had not experienced in my reading journey. And that's what made this so special. The story is amazing, and it's a questionable book for questionable people like myself, and I can't wait to pick up the second book in this duet. In number 3, which is fitting, I have Beard Signs by Penny Reed. This is the 3rd book in her Winston Brothers series, and if you have been around, you know I have been obsessed with this series this year. This book is by far my favorite in the series. Cletus is the brother who is like this awkward guy, but also he kind of plays at being awkward, so people underestimate him because he is not truly a criminal mastermind, but he is sneaky. Like, he's super mischievous. He gets what he wants by not the greatest methods, and his love interest in this book is Jen, and she goes by the Banana Cake Queen, but her parents put a lot of pressure on her, so she has like this social media presence, and she's basically this character who has a bakery in their community and just bakes like the most impeccable desserts. And this book is her like busting out of that and just becoming herself, and Cletus is helping her do that, but she also is like low-key blackmailing him, but is very open about blackmailing him, and it's funny because he blackmails people too. It's just the most fun and exciting time, and I just love this book so much. And also Cletus and Jen have a spin-off series. The first book is Engagement and Espionage, and I'm so excited to pick that up in the new year also. In the number 2 spot, I have Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson. This series is so thick. This is the 4th book in his Stormlight Archive series. So you are just invested in this, right? Like, you just get so invested in these characters and the story, and I had to put this book high up on this list. I know I probably don't talk about it a lot. I just haven't read a lot of fantasy or talked about a lot of fantasy this year, and I read this very early in the year. I read this in January. This is an adult high fantasy series. There's a lot of politicking going around. There are different species of characters in this. This is what this 4th book really focuses on, is there are two species. Like, I don't want to say there's an alien species, but there is an alien species, and the humans are fighting this other species of people. It's really hard for me to explain. Also, there are, I'll call them magical abilities, but some people can utilize Stormlight, which is why it's called the Stormlight Archives, which is stored in these stones, and these stones are charged by these storms that come around. So that's kind of the magic setup. There's also a different realm in this world that you can kind of travel to, where these kind of spirit-like beings, but they're more like energy. Let's call them energy beings. They're called Spren, and we do a lot of traveling to Shadesmar, which is that world in this book also. There's a lot of different characters, but all you need to know is that Kaladin is the best, and he's having a really hard sad boy time in this 4th book, and we're there with him on his journey. And that probably didn't make any sense unless you are familiar with this series, but it's so good. If you are looking to get invested in just a new world, pick up a Brandon Sanderson novel, any Brandon Sanderson novel. And then my number 1 book of 2021, this is not going to be a surprise. This is Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. I've talked about it a lot. It's listed as a thriller, I believe. It's a revenge story. It is actiony. This is basically a violent, graphic action movie in book form. Like, I kept imagining what they would do with this if it was a movie. I would love for them to make this a movie. So let me tell you what it's about. It's about 2 dads. They each had sons, and their sons were married to each other, and they had really strained relationships with their sons, but then their sons get murdered, and no one's really doing a lot about it. The case hasn't gotten very far, so they take it upon themselves to hunt down and get revenge on the people who murdered their sons. And this is just such a fun time. There's tons of action. Like, this is so fast paced. I think about some of the scenes a lot, and it's just so great. But also there's a lot of good conversations about race and sexuality, and this book made me cry. It had it all for me, and I didn't read any other book that was like this year. It's just special to me. It stands out. I can remember a lot about it, and I think it's a book that everyone should read. It is graphic and descriptive. Like, there's a mulch machine in here, and it's just such a fun time though. Like, it's so good. It's just really so good, and I would recommend it to anyone and everyone. It's just amazing. One of my favorite books of all time. And I had so many other books that I loved this year but just didn't make this list. I'm just gonna give them quick shout outs. Credence by Penelope Douglas, For Your Own Good by Samantha Downing, Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. That one was so good. The Highwayman by Kerrigan Byrne for a historical. Obviously, It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. I read this book this year. It's so good. Zodiac Academy. I know like some people have not been liking this. I totally get it. I didn't love the first book, but the second book, Ruthless Fae, so good. Normal People by Sally Rooney. Another book that I just have thought about a lot. Like, this book is not for everyone, and because of that I feel like I just love it even more. The writing is just so weird and it's so like gloomy. Like, this is a gloomy book and I loved it. And then Milk Fed by Melissa Broder. This book is just so different. This is just a thoughtful book where you are just in someone's head and you're like, oh, this is a scary place to be. And I just read so many good books. My average rating for this year was a 4.23 so far, which is a really high rating. At this point I've read 132 books, so this list was really hard to make because I just really enjoyed most of the books that I read this year, and really that's what we're striving for, right? So comment down below, let me know some of your favorite books that you read this year. Let me know if you read any of these and what you thought about them. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next one.